Proverbs chapter 5. My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding, that you may keep discretion and your lips may guard knowledge. For the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps follow the path of Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways wander, and she does not know it. And now, O sons, listen to me, and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Keep your way far from her, and do not go near the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others and your years to the merciless, lest strangers take their fill of your strength, and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. And at the end of your life you groan, when your flesh and body are consumed, and you say, how I hated discipline, and my heart despised reproof. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. I am at the brink of utter ruin in the assembly congregation. Drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets? Let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. Wow, we are just really getting in there, aren't we? Be intoxicated always in her love. Why should you be intoxicated, my son, with a forbidden woman and embrace the bosom of an adulteress? For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin. He dies for lack of discipline, and because of his great folly, he is led astray. Thank you guys for joining me on day 5 of our Proverbs Bible study. And this is where things start to get pretty intense. There is no surprise that when it comes to sexual sin, I'm surprised it's not in like chapter 2 of the Proverbs, but it's definitely high on the priority list when it comes to this book, and we are just jumping straight into it. Now, there's a bit of, I would say, a prelude to chapter 5, and that's back in chapter 4, when it says in verse 23, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life. In essence, it's saying to guard your heart. Make sure you're constantly aware of what you're seeing, what you're thinking, what you're doing, where you're going, you're consuming. That's more, I think, applicable to our day. We consume stuff nonstop. Check your phone and tell me how many scrolling hours you have. For me, it's too much. We have to be constantly aware of what we are consuming, because the heart is corruptible, and it's very easy for whatever that comes into the heart to be what comes out of the heart. If negativity and perversion and sin come into the heart, that's what's going to come out. And again, we are seeing another personification, this time in the polar opposite end of the spectrum, where temptation in the form of adultery is being personified as a woman. However, comes to the sexual sin is much more predominant in males. It is speaking to both male and female alike. In this chapter, talking about the warning against adultery, the most important thing that we can do is, number one, to recognize the temptation. In order to guard our hearts properly, we have to be aware. We have to be in the Word of God, seeking out biblical wisdom. And while we're all wired differently, we have to pinpoint what those snares are, those things that easily entrap each of us individually and differently. We've got to be able to know what those things are in order that we can steer clear of being tempted by those things. So now that you've identified it, you can begin to put parameters up in your life to avoid it. And I would argue that the author of Proverbs probably had no clue what the 21st century would look like in terms of being tempted into what this passage is talking about, and not just tempted into the actual act of adultery, but sexual sin in and of itself, how pervasive and readily available it is to any one of us at any time. The world that we live in makes it so, essentially. And as Christians, as believers, especially as married individuals, we need to put up those safeguards in our lives that whether it's the viewing of a certain word, or the types of relationships you might have with the opposite sex at work or out in public, any of those things that could be a doorway into the, like, what would be the ultimate, I guess, act in adultery. We want to put up safeguards in those areas of our lives. You might say, Justin, but why? Why is it that I should do that? Why ought I not, fall into these temptations and give into these temptations? Well, there are consequences, both direct and indirect. When I say direct, obviously, like if there is adultery in a marriage, there is pain, there is years of suffering, there is divorce, there's a whole lot of really bad stuff. Even if it's a hidden sin, if it's something that is a lust or a viewing of a certain thing and it's hidden, there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of guilt. And that would be more so, I think, the indirect, where you might carry something with you, especially if you're trying to hide something and you shouldn't be doing it, or maybe you've done something and you're like, I know I shouldn't have done that. And those are the things that are the direct versus indirect consequences. And the Bible talks about that here. It says in verse 11, and at the end of your life you groan when your flesh and body are consumed. It just gives a lot of really aggressive, negative language, and it rightfully so. There's a huge warning in the Bible when it comes to this stuff, and Proverbs is laying it out here, and it is extreme. It is extreme language, and I love verse 13. I love it. I absolutely love it. It says, I did not listen, verse 12. And you say, how I hated discipline, and my heart despised reproof. I did not listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. I am at the brink of utter ruin in the assembled congregation. So speaking more so, I think, to married couples, I could make a lot of videos on this, but speaking more to married couples, specifically men and women, predominantly, I would say men, guard your heart, identify the temptation and become aware of it so that you can then resist it and you can fight against it. And that may be practical things such as, deleting a social media account. It might be giving your password to your spouse for all of your accounts in your computer. There are several websites out there that you can, subscribe to that give you different blockers on your computer. And like I said in the last video, it's really good to have a mentor, somebody that you can trust with this information, but also at the same time as the church, knowing that so many people struggle with sexual sin, not just through the acts, but also in the mind, and how it can quickly, it can go from the mind to something more advanced really quickly. We should talk about it more. There should just not be this shame. There is so much shame in the Christian culture when it comes to this particular sin, because and I think that's why people hide it and they don't talk about it. Or and I'm not just talking about the viewing of a certain word, but even like adultery in and of itself. You think that's out in the open? No, people try to hide it. It is a hidden sin. Every bit of it is hidden, and we need to bring it out into the open. And when we do, and we talk to each other and we build community around it, we say, hey, there's no shame in here. We're all struggling with the same thing, right? Okay, then let's talk through it, and let's band together like Spartans and fight this nonsense. Anyways, okay, gonna get off my soapbox there. Going into the last few verses 15 through 23, it's basically saying that we need to stick to. Let me just read what I wrote. Drink the water. Stay faithful to your spouse. There is nothing that the world offers or can offer that God will not provide and bless in your marriage. Oh, and I like this too. For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his paths. God is omnipresent and he's omniscient. He knows and he sees all. And if you think that you're hiding anything, you're not. The God of the universe, which has more repercussions than your spouse or your mom or your dad, the God of the universe knows you fully and he sees everything. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his sin. He dies for lack of discipline, and because of his great folly, he is led astray. And the lack of discipline is the death of young men. Again, very extreme language. It's not saying that young men are dying because of lack of discipline, but especially when it comes to this topic, we as young men, we need to build up strengthen the muscle of self-control and self-discipline. And I am just as guilty as the next person. I am just as much a failure as the next person. I'm not coming to you with an A+ report card here, okay? But I will say that sexual sin is the devil's playground. And man, he loves to just dangle things in front of us and say, hey, come swing on the swings with me, and just tempt us and trick us. And we got to stay in the Word, and we've got to seek out biblical wisdom and just really strive to live according to godly principles, which is, again, biblical wisdom. And heed the warnings that are in this book, and especially in the Proverbs. Again, it reiterates that this is about adultery, but so many of these smaller things compound over time, which ultimately lead. You might think, I'm not just going to go, I got nobody out there, I ain't going to cheat on. What are you talking about, right? That doesn't have anything to do with me. Let me just close out with this verse. Proverbs 14:12. We've already talked about this. There is a way that seems right to man, but its end is the way of death. Don't try to lean on your own understanding, as we've said several times. Dive into the Word and just seek God in prayer and ask for help as well. This video specifically, out of all the Proverbs videos, I think I've spoken a little bit more from the heart than just from notes. And so hopefully this was encouraging, informative, or helpful. And, if you guys have any comments, let me know down below. If you need help, please message me on Instagram, reach out. I'd love to pray for you and just see what I can do to help. Because as believers, as Christ followers, we are in this together. We have to build each other up. We've got to come together and, do the thing. We're going to wrap up this video and we'll hop into chapter 6 tomorrow, which again, we're going to be talking more about adultery. So stay tuned for that. We'll get to talk about this a little bit more, and we will see you in the next video.